Welcome back to our system thinking series. We are taking a crucial step in our journey and diving into the world of system thinking tools. In our previous videos, we defined a problem as the gap between where you are and where you like to be, that is what you desire, and we explored different thinking modes from reductionist to holistic approaches. For those who missed them, check out part 1 and 2 in the description below. Now is the time to understand systems. Although people prefer jumping to a conclusion in the name of acting fast, we are not here to solve that gap just yet. Instead, today our focus is understanding the systems we are in, laying down the full picture of a situation from different angles to create a strong foundation for our next video on the problem identification and definition. And goal of this step is making tacit knowledge explicit for everyone dealing with the system so that you can unfold the problems within those systems correctly. Traditionally, reductionist thinking and generative thinking tools, there are many tools that provide you to understand the environment, but they lack connections of the system. They are usually simple snapshots of the environment like SWOT or PASTEL analysis or Porter's five forces, etc. But today we will learn to complete a puzzle rather than looking at each page separately. Why is this important? Because before you can pinpoint where things are going wrong, you must have an idea of what the entire system looks like. People oftentimes deal with wrong problems and waste their energy, especially in complex situations. And moreover, it is crucial to understand where you are from different angles before addressing the gap in complex cases. And to illustrate this, let's take a cue from the case of Elon Musk when he takes over an organization, for example, Twitter, and more recently the bureaucracy. He shuts everything down to strip away the layers of entrenched processes so he can understand what's truly going on inside the system through listening feedbacks afterwards. And obviously, his approach does create new challenges, but he argues that by shutting down most of the organization and rebuilding and iterating through feedbacks caused by this drastic move, you can address problems faster and more effectively later on. And in this video, we will look into a more knowledgeable method to lay down a situation using a range of system thinking tools without needing to close down everything, causing more trouble for the sake of understanding. There are many tools developed to understand systems, but I will narrow down our selection today to some most frequently used ones like stakeholder maps, system maps, and network diagrams and matrices. And also we will visit a couple of my own system thinking tools. Each of them offers a different lens to view your system, ensuring you capture both the visible components and subtler dynamics at play. As we discussed earlier in this series, the recognition of problem begins when your attention is grabbed because of a changing environment or mindset, which no longer satisfies the current state as a desired state. And in the case of Musk or any other similarly minded person taking over your organization, it's rather a mindset or mental change for the organization, assuming the external environment remains as is. And people like them are usually tempted to jump into conclusion based on their previous experiences and perceptions about the organization or their prejudices. However, although the motivation for mindset change can be the same for another system thinker, let's say the perception of Musk and system thinker is that the organization is less efficient and subpar productive and doesn't align with the desired state. One crucial difference between Musk and a system thinker is before jumping into problem solving, system thinkers first ask themselves, what does the current system actually look like? And how can we map everything out? And we want to establish a clear picture of the situation that creates those gaps by asking the right questions. Imagine you are a manager in a large organization like Twitter, and suddenly Elon walks in and decides to shut down several departments, including yours. I hope you won't be in such a situation, but let's look at what his rationale is. He wants to see the naked structure of the organization, stripping away layers of bureaucracy and processes, and to understand how everything connects and where the breakdowns and leaks occur, which limits the efficiency and productivity of the company. His radical approach is about creating an environment where the system can be re examined, understood, and then improved. This is the essence of what we are doing today, actually. You can be like Elon Musk, like a bull in a china shop, or you can think in systems to map out the situation before labeling every element as a problem and causing a sudden interruption like he does. By understanding the system, actually you gain clarity on four fundamental blocks that define a system. They are the purpose, which is what does this system do, what functions or purpose does it fulfill. The boundaries, that's what's inside the system and what exists in the environment around it. And the elements or components, who are the key players, tools, or machinery, and what functions do they perform, or what do they require to perform. And the relationships, how do these components interact, what are the flows of information, material, and influence between them. In this video, we will learn how to define purpose, boundaries, and uncover some high-level elements and relations. And in the next 3 episodes, we will dig into the details of elements and relations, especially when we are talking about the system conceptualization. To understand any socio-technical system on a high level, I usually use the following 3 steps. First, agree and define context, perspectives, and life stages of the system. Then, research and illustrate high-level systems and their possible interactions. And lastly, discuss with the team and iterate until agreeing on high-level dynamics. The first step is defining and agreeing on context, perspectives, and life stages, because depending on them, the purpose, boundaries, and relationships can alter greatly. But most importantly, perceived gap can become larger or narrower at each angle. Thus, perspective, context, and life stages matter a lot to unfold the reality of the system. Actually, I have a visualization which I found on social media, and it perfectly shows how perspectives can alter the situation perceived. And our aim is to capture the whole graph by looking through every dimension we have offered by the system. And depending on the case, there can be multiple life stages, perspectives, and contexts to be considered at the same time. Maybe we can look at a real example of Twitter acquisition and remember what happened and what could have been done differently if this was done by a system thinker. But before diving into life stages, perspectives, and contexts, please keep in mind that this is an educational video and assumptions are based on publicly available information. So in October 2022, Elon Musk acquired Twitter. Once it was a social media company solely focused on being the social media service which offers breaking news fastest and from the source, and aiming to be extremely lively and integrated to live events in more ways than any other social media companies achieved, while preventing abuse and maintaining a safe environment. It was their previous agenda. But Elon's vision for the Twitter was totally different. He wanted to convert Twitter into something he calls the everything app, integrating all media types and payments, AI, and even blockchain technologies. And he was also no fan of its abuse prevention and safety mechanisms, claiming that Twitter is harming free speech. And moreover, he a couple of times stated that he is not happy with the company's financial performance. So when the acquisition was completed, there was a great mental change for the company, which resulted in a huge gap between Twitter's current state, Elon's newly inserted desired state, creating a big problem. Most of you are familiar with what happened next. He laid off almost everyone, closed many departments, and dive into restructuring everything while stating his lack of trust on former employees, etc. Now, what would happen if a system thinker jumped into the company and wanted to address the same gap? Let's go back to our algorithm and start with agreeing on the life stage. It is usually the most obvious one when a systems thinker looks into an organization. And you might think that why do we need to bother if it is so obvious? Because it is sometimes forgotten and discussions sometimes might shift to out of scope when you do not agree on this very first step. Any organization, person, product, or service can be in one of the five stages of their lifetime. First one is existence, or sometimes called the birth stage, depending on the context. It is the start of an organization. And for a business, it is a stage when a company is established, products or services developed and marketed for the first time. And even it includes the trial period to find its customer base. And second stage is survival, or sometimes called the pursuing growth stage. There are five substages for a business between survival and the next stage. They are called creative expansion, directional expansion, expansion through delegation, expansion through coordination, and expansion through collaboration. And every substage has their own known issues. And in future, we will look into them and talk about them in detail. If you don't want to miss it, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell button now. Now, let's move on to third stage. It is the maturity stage. For a business, it usually starts around at the fourth substage of the survival stage, when the organization is well established and now starts to suffer from that establishment and blocks its growth. The fourth and fifth stage is renewal and decline, or that in this stage an organization either survives through a maturity crisis through renewing itself, or starts to decline and eventually dies. Please be aware that the death stage is a possibility after any stage if the company could not manage their corresponding crisis, right? The beauty of system thinking is that it can address any stage perfectly. So for the case of Twitter in 2022, it was still in growth stage, but it had limited profitability, which can be considered as a mid or late stage survival considering a company's age, but not exactly reached to maturity. So the desired state is making Twitter an everything app. Thus, there will be some new services or products of Twitter which will be in the first stage of their existence. Okay, next we should look at the current perspectives and context to map the systems for all Twitter. This might be a meticulous task for super systems, but once you lay them down, crafting the high-level system map will become a lot easier actually. And in order to cover all perspectives and contexts, best practice is usually performing a brainstorming session with the experts to list important players and stakeholders for the system to achieve its purpose. Because perspectives are only meaningful when you know whose perspective it is and what do they desire, and contexts are usually a function of those perspectives. To facilitate this process and further illustrate what's going on currently in the system, I use my system stakeholder value analysis, which I developed when I was a consultant. And this tool is really helpful in this sort of brainstorming sessions. And I will leave the link for this mirror template in the comments down below for you to access and to play. Today, we will only cover the first half of it, which focuses on the current state. And in the next video, we will dive into the second half to understand the desired state and identify the gaps and thus the problem. System Stakeholder Value Analysis, or SSVA in short, basically looks to the organization's environment from the flow of value perspective. Why do I do that? Because a business can only perform its function and purpose as long as it has the fuel, which is money driven through value in modern economics. Of course, it is not limited to that, but that's the core paradigm we live in. And aim of this analysis is to unfold values and its stakeholders so that we can define purpose, boundaries, and some elements of those systems. As a matter of fact, once you define value, you instantly define the purpose or function of the system or subsystem in that environment. That's the beauty of that tool. In SSVA, we have four essential types of value which is present in modern markets. They are economic value, functional value, social value, and psychological value. I will make a separate video about values and talk about the different approaches on value creation and perception, because there are more than four value types and can be used according to the context. But for this analysis, these four usually cover enough. Moreover, this tool also looks to stakeholders from two perspectives. That are the creators who create value using the company's available resources, products, and services to make value for themselves, and the consumers who consume the values created by the creators, obviously. And another dimension of this tool considers the boundaries of the system. At this stage, we are looking directly at the company. So the only boundary we need to consider is that what is inside the company and what is outside the company. It is important to remember that boundaries are always subject to perspectives and context. So it can alter greatly, but for now we are looking to the company, so the border is company. Best way to perform this analysis is a brainstorm session, as I said, with all the key players concerning the issue. And in the case of Twitter, it is the leadership team. Sometimes management teams hire consultants and experts to perform these tasks. If that's the case, then there is an additional step of researching the situation through quantitative and qualitative methods. If you are doing this as an exercise for your professional development, you can always brainstorm with ChatGPT. This is what I did for this video actually. After deciding boundaries, the main steps for the first part, which focuses on current state, are brainstorming values and their creators and consumers, which will define purposes and stakeholders. Creating a network map and stakeholder value matrix, which will show main interconnections, and defining and illustrating high-level systems, which will help conceptualization in the future. The second part of the tool has the same steps but for the desired state, and the final part is for gap analysis, which will help define the problem in an actionable manner. We will talk about these in the next episode. Let's briefly look at each value buckets for the current state. I did not include every stakeholder in this template, so you can fill them as an exercise for yourself. Most intuitive way to start with is possibly the economic value for most of the people. However, to unfold every other value easily, I always suggest starting with functional value, because it is what a solution does and provides to consumers. That is the solution the offer provides. And once you understand that mechanism, it is easier to connect the other dots of the system. And there are two approaches to start unfolding those functional values or any other values. Either you start with brainstorming about the current functional values of your products or services, and then distribute them into buckets by defining their creators and consumers, or you can start diving into buckets and brainstorm stakeholders inside the bucket first, and then think about what values they create and who consumes them, and then connect everything in this context. Let's begin to think of the functional values of Twitter. First of all, the service should be up and running all the time, right? So maintaining core platform functionalities is a functional value, and it is created inside the Twitter. So who creates this value? Obviously, I don't know how they name their department, so I gave a generic name of engineering team. Now the next question, who consumes it? Well, technically almost everyone related to the systems, and I know it's not helpful, but for the time being you can write down all stakeholders, and as you unfold more you can connect the new stakeholders, or simply you can name the most broad stakeholder for the time being. And in this case I just name that as general users and only put that sticker as a placeholder. Let's think about another functional value. For example, companies, organizations, and even governments use this platform to disseminate information about themselves, and this can be classified as functional value, right? So who creates this value? The ones who want to disseminate correct information about themselves, the aforementioned businesses, organizations, and governments. So Who consumes this value? Well, obviously, general users, but there is more. I use general user to define a broad stakeholder group for the sake of simplicity, but we can think of more narrower and refined groups. For example, content creators or influencers who use the platform more actively than an average user or general user can use that disseminated information to create and share further information and knowledge, right? You can also think of paying users if there's any, etc. I don't want to make this video too long by walking through every card here, so I will not go in details for every value, and you can stop the video or go to the link below and check them. I intentionally did not complete the whole values and stakeholders. I want you to open it and think about it and play with it. It is a great exercise. For the time being, let's focus on how to use this tool. After you define values and its creators and consumers as the stakeholders, you need to decide who is inside and who is outside, and then distribute them on the chart by showing their connections from creator to consumer and putting the value on a sticky note on that connection. Another important step is defining a comparable, preferably numeric value, which indicates how important that arrow is for each contributor. Depending on the case, you can create a poll and let contributors vote, or let them assign a numeric value and then use sum or average of it. One way to do that is using Fibonacci numbers between 0 and 21, which I frequently prefer because it helps people to consider weight of value better. Like 0 means I do not see any value from my perspective, and 21 means this is a significant value for my job. Once you are done with the values, the next step is creating a network graph and matrix. Network graphs are handy in system thinking. They can be used in many contexts to visualize the strength of connections between nodes, and matrix is a simple table used to summarize the numeric values of networks. If you have identified a really long list of stakeholders, it is usually great to see them on a network. One way to prepare a network map is distributing nodes on a circle, and for our exercise I use this method and assign nodes as stakeholders, the left side of circle being insiders and the right side being outsiders. To perform this step, we go back to value diagrams and prepare a unique list of stakeholders for both inside and outside, and then distribute them on the circle accordingly. Next step is moving every value arrow into a circle, starting from creating stakeholder and reaching to consuming stakeholder with their sticky notes. As you put arrows in the network map, simultaneously note the numeric value on the matrix. The matrix is structured to have all the stakeholders on the rows and columns, and the direction of value is from row to column. When you are done, check the totals of rows and columns and decide a threshold value to move some stakeholders from the map so that you can focus better. The final step for this part of the tool is naming and mapping subsystems and systems of the current state. As I said earlier, every value is actually a purpose for a system. Thus, there should be some governing mechanisms to create that value, right? So for each arrow, you should have a system or at least a subsystem. When mapping out high-level systems, there are two levels to consider: systems in focus being inside, and the other systems that interact with it in the environment, which is outside or extended system. To decide where to place each system, we will use our prior steps. If the creator of the value is on the left side of the network map, which is inside, then corresponding system should be inside regardless of the consumer's position. If both creator and consumer are on the right side of the network, which is the outside, then the corresponding system should be in the environment part. For example, the value of generating revenue through offering service has one creator and two consumers. Both of them can be considered as a revenue system, or you can name subsystems for each consumer type, one being subscription system and the other being the ad system, because they have different business nature. Former is B2C and the latter is B2B. Another one is the value of maintaining core platform functionalities, which is created by the engineering team and benefited by almost every other stakeholder. We can name this system as maintenance system inside the boundary and put connection lines to other systems whose creators benefit from this value, like revenue and pricing teams are benefiting from this value to create their value. So I put a link between them. After you name systems and create connections between them, you will have a high-level system map with defined borders, their purposes, and stakeholders based on the value context, which gives you the bigger picture about both immediate environment and the extended environment. So let's go back to our understanding algorithm. First, we have agreed on and defined context, perspectives, and life stages of the system. Then we have illustrated high-level systems and the partial of interactions within those systems. And now the team can discuss and iterate maps until agreeing on the high-level map. Once team reaches a common understanding of the current state, the first part of the exercise can be considered completed. And next step is agreeing on the desired state and defining gaps between current and desired states so that team can address them and reach a resolution. We will talk about those steps in the following part of our systems thinking series. And if you have any questions regarding template or steps I described here, please feel free to ask me in the comment section down below. And if you enjoy this video and find it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends and colleagues. Until next time, stay curious and take care.